Alrighty, folks, we're going to get started. Today, we're going to be talking about uh, you know, start talking about hand tools, and I'm trying to get the screen all situated here. So let's go ahead and get started. I do want to remind everybody to make sure that they are checking Canvas and making sure they're going to keep up on their grades. So you'll hear this ongoing with me. Anyways, hand tools are expensive, one thing for sure, and you need to get good quality hand tools. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to be talking about the different types of wrenches, talk about ratchets, also start getting into screwdrivers, some extensions, some hammers, mallets, and different tools that you'll be using in the shop. And we'll be using it in the shop too. But one of the things that you really need to, well, wrenches is a big thing. Wrenches are tools that you'll use ongoing. And again, you get a good quality wrench that's going to last you a long time. It's not going to break very easily. The chrome peels off or anything like that, because there are some less quality tools out there that you can buy a lot cheaper, but then you're going to not get the performance out of them and the actual life of what you're going to need. I have all kinds of tools in my toolbox till this day, and I try to do the best of getting the best quality. So continuing on, there's different types of wrenches. There's open end wrenches, there's box end wrenches, or combination wrenches. And I'm going to show you some pictures of the different ones as we go along. And there's adjustable wrenches. These are not the best wrench to have, but it is to go to if there's nothing else that will work. There's line wrenches that are specifically for fuel lines, brake lines, any kind of line that has a very specific need. So this is kind of how wrenches start off before they go really too far. This is a combination wrench that has actually been molded, and they're going to cut it, away all the excess, and then they're going to go ahead and chrome it and harden it and make sure it works correctly for you. And there's different sizes. So this screen shows the actual what I'm talking about. Now you'll notice that the way this wrench is, this is an open end wrench. It has a specific degree of way it's set. The end wrench, end wrench open end is actually set, so you can get a better leverage off of it. Now this is an open end wrench. It's got one size for one side, a 1/2 inch on one side, and it's got a 9/16 on the other. There are different wrenches. This is a couple of them showing you a box end wrench that actually will spin, and I like this little graphic that they have here, and you can flip it over and get a little more leverage off of it. That's what the great thing about it. But I do want to say with an open end wrench, they can, if you're not careful and they don't fit correctly, it will actually round the bolt or the nut over. So you got to be very careful how you do it. You want to make sure it's a good tight fit to it. Now there's the other part that is a box end type of it, that on the other end that you can actually get a better leverage on it, but sometimes it just doesn't fit right. Okay, let's get on past this guy. There we go. So the box end is what you really want to use as much as possible, because that gets a leverage all the way around the actual nut or bolt. So this is where you really want to make sure that fastener actually has a good fit around it. That way you can get a good spin on it and you don't round things over as well. Now this is a 12 point, a 6 point is going to be a little bit better because that's how the bolt is made. But for kind of getting a better spin off of it, you might say. It will give you so you can move it around and get a better, turn off of it in a way. So here is the box end of a combination wrench. So this is a combination. You can actually have a wrench that has a box end on both sides. I usually like the open end wrench that has the open end on both sides. You can have a box on the on each end, and that will have a different size, just like the open end wrench. Now this guy here, I'm not a big fan of him, but it is there. Now if you get to the point where that's the last thing you can use, this and a pipe wrench are probably the only ones. But do know that this is an adjustable wrench. This adjustable wrench will adjust up to the work or the bolt or the nut, and it is not the best because it doesn't have the correct fit. That adjustable part of it can actually slip, and it can cause rounding over the actual nut or the bolt. I use this more so for kind of bending metals and stuff like that, because it does have a nice adjustment to it, and you can actually bend in it. Just not as critical as a bolt or a nut. The other type of wrench is a this is an actual line wrench, or sometimes they call it now I wouldn't say a pipe wrench, but it is a wrench that actually fits around a little bit more, and it gives a better grasp of the work. That way you don't round it over. So if you were to use on a very specific, like a tubing, and the nut on the tubing, like your brake lines, your fuel lines, and you use the regular open end wrench on it because you can't get the box in there very easily, but you would actually end up rounding it, possibly rounding it over. So it's better to have a line wrench to grab something like this. Now, the other things that we have are ratchets, sockets, and extensions. The ratchets make it easier for us to do work. I mean, when we got nuts and bolts, instead of grabbing a box end wrench or an open end wrench, we can actually put a socket on it and we get a good fit around it. So here is a ratchet. Now the ratchets go in different sizes. You can go 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. It can actually go up into heavy equipment to inch, 1.5 inch, 2 inch sizes because of the heavy end or the big equipment. There also is a breaker bar. These are great for like taking off things like lug nuts on your car. In other words, the attaching bolts or nuts that you might have holding the wheel in place. So these are a great thing. It's better than a ratchet, but this has a specific use. Now they do have in this PowerPoint some different tips, and I really do believe in this. Now, so there's some people call them cheater bars, and these can actually damage your tool. Basically, what they're doing, they're taking like that breaker bar that you've seen on the previous screen, and they're putting a pipe on the end of it. So just to show you what I'm talking about, I'm going to go back one. But they would take a pipe and put it on the end here. It's an open end pipe, and make it a little bit longer so they get a little more leverage on it. Well, that'll put extra work on this part of it, and it can actually crack it, snap it, and you can actually hurt yourself, especially if you have a lot of leverage on it and you're putting a lot of force on it, and it can actually break the tool. You could injure yourself. So I am not a big fan of it. My dad used to, tell me to go get the snipe, and I'm going, what this is a snipe? And it was a tube he put on the end of something to make it easier. Well, put a little more leverage on him, on the work. So these are some sockets. This is what they call a shallow type socket. They make them even smaller than this too, to where they're actually smaller in height. But These are some basic ones. So 1/4 inch, you're going to do it on pretty much light work. 3/8 is near kind of every all the time going and grabbing. You get into your 1/2 inches, sizes. So what we're looking at, folks, is we're looking at the drive side. So we have a ratchet and it has a drive side to it. And this has to connect. Now they make adapters to make like a 1/4 inch drive go up to 3/8 or vice versa. I'm not a big fan of that either. Use the correct size and drive for what you are using or what you're working on. I'm sorry. Here is a couple sockets like I talked about a little bit earlier. This is a 12 point, which it will work. But then again, remember, you have a chance of, if it's not if it's maybe a bolt's a little bit older and it's already starting to round, you could actually cause it to round over more. I'm a fan of the 6 point. These 6 points are the best. Now, there are some nuts and bolts, and I do want to point this out, that are actually 12 point. So those type, some exhaust bolts can be that size, some intake bolts can be like this on the 12 points. So depending on the work is the best thing to use on that particular piece of work. So here is, again, they're showing you the different types. This is a 6 point over here, and then it gives a better fit. And then this 12 point, it can actually possibly, I'm just saying possibly round over. So that's pretty much on that end. There is also what they call crow's feet. Now, when you get into specific areas where you need a long extension to get down into it, these are what they call crow's feet. Now, the crow's feet can be almost like an open-end wrench, or they can be more in this shape. You can actually, this is a 12 point crow's foot. Well, it may not be the whole 12 points, but you kind of get the idea. This will actually go across and get into a long, you usually have a long extension on this, and it goes up to the ratchet, and then it kind of breaks the work loose. You can have it either an open end like the regular one, or this type, and it can actually be more of a kind of 6.2. So there's different types. This is probably one of the most common to make it easier to get into. Different types of sockets. We have deep sockets, regular sockets, or really shallow sockets, which would be a smaller, and there are some mediums, so they're not quite as deep. But depending on what you're working on and the location of the work, you may have a long stud with a nut going on it. I know we haven't talked about fasteners yet, and I will be doing a video pretty quick on that. But you might have a long, piece of stock that actually has to have a nut on it, and this will make it easier to get down and tighten it up. Or you can use a regular one, but you might lose the ability to go down farther. That's what I'm getting at. So there's different types of fasteners, and each fastener, folks, has a specific torque. In other words, a turning force. It goes down so far, and it's set, and it actually holds the work together. Or you have a head bolt and you're going down, it has a specific torque. If you don't use the specific torque, you just kind of run it down, it could come loose. Or if you're very, very strong, you go on down until you say, oh, it's tight, and you snap it. So you want to make sure you put the specific torque. I'll be doing a little on torque as we go along in a future video. But I just want to kind of go over an overview on this. So the type of torque wrenches you might see out there, or the click type. And basically, you're just going to go ahead and run it down. You're going to set up the tool to where it'll actually click when it gets to a specific torque. The next is a beam type. I love my beam type, especially when I'm setting differentials or rear ends of a vehicle, because that gives me a good idea. But on a beam type, you really have to be looking straight on it, or else you get the incorrect torque. And then there's dial types. And the one thing they didn't show you too is digital types. Dial types, same thing, you dial it in, and then you have either a vibration or anything, something like that. And the same thing with the electronic ones. The electronic ones, of course, you got to think about the battery in them. Now, all of these torque wrenches, and the ones I'm going to be showing you too, are actually need to be calibrated. They don't last forever. The calibration goes away after a period of time. Depending on how much I use my torque wrench, which was quite a bit, at a minimum, I would do once a year. I would send it in to my tool manufacturer and have it recalibrated. But the different types of torque wrenches here, we actually have, one that actually, it doesn't really show the whole thing, but it actually shows, it looks like it's an actual click type. And as you go across, and it will actually go click when you get to that specific torque. Now there's a special way of using that tool too. And I'll show you in lab, especially when we get into talk about torquing lug nuts. In other words, the attaching nuts to your wheels. We don't want any wheels just coming flying off. The other type that I like a lot, and this is usually for specific duties, I use this. This is a beam type. This beam type, it actually works well when you are doing very fine things, small torque measurements, not the larger ones, like it'd be down to the inch pounds or very small foot pounds, or pound feet is what it's called. So, torque wrenches need to be calibrated. Like I said earlier, you want to make sure they're calibrated on a regular basis, not just, let them try to last forever. They won't. You'll lose torque, and then they won't be tight enough. And that's what I found, they'll be less, they won't be as tight as they're supposed to. Your work won't be as tight as it's supposed to be. So this is a torque, actually, a checker, and some of them are digital. The ones that we have at school are digital, and there again, you want to make sure you use the correct tool for what you're calibrating to. Some of them are not, just change a few parts or spin a few things. You want to make sure you use the right one. So so is it pound feet or foot pound? It's actually expressed in pound feet, so the amount of force. What are the standard automotive drives socket sizes? And like I talked a little bit earlier, quarter, 3/8, and ½ inch are usually your standard sizes. So screwdrivers is another tool you're going to have, you're going to need to have. I'm not going to say you're going to have, but it is very, helpful. Let's put it that way. So there's the flat tip, the Phillips, the offsets, and the torque, and the impact. So I'm going to show you a few things here. One is a flat blade, and this is going to be one of your common ones. Not one screwdriver fits all, and I want to make that very, very clear. The size of the blade, okay, and the width and the thickness of it, it makes it very important that that the way that it fits in the work. That opening in the screw or the fastener has a specific thickness and specific width. If you put the wrong tool in there, you can actually damage your screw or your fastener. So be very careful. That's why they make different sizes. It's not one size they put in a kit. So the length in the blade, and this is again where I want you to make sure that you take care with this, your tools. If they get damaged on the end, it's not a matter of grinding them down and fixing them up yourself. You want to be very careful with it. And if it does get damaged, you need to get a replacement. Or, I know for sure some of the tool manufacturers, if you damage the tip or you break the tip, they guarantee it because the hardening they do to them and the way the process of making the tool, they'll actually go ahead and give you a new one or put a new blade on the tool. It depends on the manufacturer. Now there's other types of screwdrivers too, or what they call the stubbies. So they're those small palm fit, you can put in your palm and do it like it. It just depends on what kind of work you're doing. It's usually kind of a light work. The other type of screwdrivers are a torque, and there can be this type of torque, or they can actually have what they call security torque, where you are on, it has a kind of I would say a little drilled hole right here, and it has specific fasteners that you do with the security torque. This is a impact screwdriver. Now this is an impact driver. It can be just a Phillips, a straight, any one of the mating type of screw ends, to it can actually be put in here. And we use this quite a bit for making sure things are tight, especially when it comes to brake work. You want to have a specific tightness to it. It helps with that, but it's not a full torque. I would still torque it down with a torque wrench, but this really helps with removing the fasteners as they, instead of trying to get in there with a Phillips and try to do it with a screwdriver and try to get the brake drums off, you can actually round it over, or you may not get enough force to get that off. So these are very, we'll get into lab and kind of talk a little bit about this too as we go along. So what type of screwdriver requires a mallet or hammer? It's your impact driver type ones. So the impact screwdriver, of course. Now you've got hammers and mallets and all kinds of different striking types of tools. There is all different types. So this is kind of your most common. This is a ball peen type one. Body shops use them. Also, we use them too. This is different than a home hammer, like a claw hammer that you would do some drywall work on. You tend to go to this. It cracks me up every once in a while. I see a technician with a regular claw hammer in their toolbox. But this is one style. They have specific weights on them. Weight of them, the head weight of them. You'll have different sizes for different types of work. There's also a rubber mallet that's used for hammering on different softer surfaces. And you don't want to damage things. It's got a rubber into it instead of a hard metal into it. You could actually have what they call a dead blow hammer. Now this one's been damaged, but it shows you that there's actually a bit of shot inside there. So this is a metal piece that when you strike, the shot goes to one side. It gives you a little bit of a more impact on it, and it helps for different types of work again. So other types of pliers are your, we have different ones like the slip joint, the multi-groove, the line pliers, the diagonal pliers, and needle nose, locking pliers, and snap ring. These are all specific for specific work. This is a slip joint type. So you can have a regular gripping part. Again, this does not supersede any kind of sockets or wrenches. You do not just grab this and start taking fasteners off. They have a specific use for them. You are taking some metal pieces off, bending metal pieces. These are two good reasons for using it. But you'll notice on one size, and it can actually go a larger size. And there again, it's not for taking that fastener off unless it's neat. This is a specific tool for that. In a lot of your manufacturer repair procedures will say use a pair of pliers or use a socket. This is the slip joint that we just seen in a minute ago. You can see how it opens up, and then you can actually run it down and make it into a larger size. So this is what I was just talking about. The next type is actually a multi-groove. Some people call them a channel lock. Channel lock is actually a company that actually makes tools. So saying, hand me the channel locks. Even my dad said, hey, I need the channel locks. And basically he was saying a brand, okay? So here's a multi-groove. This is the small size right now. And then you can go into larger sizes. It's going to show you. And each one of those grooves will actually make it so you can make it larger and larger and larger as you go along. Line pliers, they're good for cutting and gripping. This can actually cut a wire, a soft wire, not your hard wires like your solid wires. It may or may not cut, but that cutting surfaces right here can get damaged if you get too hard of a piece of work. Then you have your, this is another one of them, just like this, another line plier right there. And that helps with, the same kind of work, but just a little bit different put together. Let's go ahead and, yeah, there you go. And then we get the diagonal cutters. Diagonal cutters are, for certain work, soft metals, soft wires, your cotter pins, and you're moving and installing, cutting them off. This is all definitely for specific work. And then you go into your diagonal cutters like this, just a little bit different, and it shows you how you can actually cut a soft piece of wire. And then your needle nose pliers, they're used for specific work. Again, they may have a cutting surface in here, but it's light wire. This is for getting down into more difficult areas, just grabbing, maybe actually going in there and taking a light piece of wire and moving it around. Again, these are very weak at the end, so don't try to use it for a regular pliers type of work. And then there's vice grips. Vice grips, which is a brand name again, and it's registered. But these are locking pliers. Great for last thing, that nut is actually rounded over, and sometimes I can replace it. Remove the nut with a locking plier. It's also great for welding, but if you're using it for welding, keep it in the welding, because that heating the piece of work and heating the actually gripping surfaces here can actually weaken it. So it's not really that great for other things, but it is great for holding things in place. Now they are adjustable, which makes it nice. You can actually adjust the end screw here, and it changes the bit size. Snap ring pliers, there's the inside ones and the outside ones that you will use like in transmissions, in different types of tubing or stock that will have something that locks something in place. And this is a good example right here. This is the internal snap ring, and you're using this type of plier. And then we have an external, like a shaft going through here. There's, again, you want to make sure you use the correct tool. They do not fit, they may fit the same, but the way they squeeze will change the way it actually opens, or it actually brings into a tighter part. The other thing we want to talk about is our different types of files. Now, files are for specific work. We want to make sure that we use them correctly. This using it correctly is very important. Just like when we get into talk about saws and stuff like that, they're made for a specific piece of work and their job. This is we have the triangular, the round files, the half round files, and the flat files. Now, when you're using a file, you want to make sure that you put a pressure as you go down and then you lift. If you end up doing a sawing type motion, you can overheat heat the actual blades inside and damage that actual file. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do. You can clean them out, but when the actual cutting section of it gets damaged, then you have to buy a new file. So you want to take good care of your tools. These are some, actually it's 10 snips as they call them, and it's for cutting thin sheet of metal or carpeting type. And then of course, everybody's seen this. Sometimes we call them a box cutter because they're great for cutting boxes, the different types of boxes and opening them up. So this is a utility knife. We do use them for opening and cutting some light stuff. This is not for your heavy wires or anything like that. Then punches and chisels. These are, again, specific duties. This actually is one. This is actually taking a pin out, and it is a specific one. Now, you do need to, of course, wear safety goggles like it says right here, because whenever you are striking, it can cause a piece of metal to fly off, and it could get in your eyes. But then again, we're always wearing safety glasses when we're in the shop. What happens after a period of time, the end can be mushroomed over. And what we do is we actually use a specific procedure to actually unmushroom that. In other words, we want to get back to the normal chamfer. You definitely do not want to keep that with our mushroomed over. You can take a file and clean it up. And that's usually the most common way. That some guys take it to a grinding wheel, which I'm not a big fan of, but that's what some people do. Then there's different types of removers. Now, this is, again, when you have a stud or a nut or a screw that is just damaged and you can't get it out. These are specific tools. This is one right here, and basically it has a little gripping part here. You put the stud in here, and then you actually, put a lot of pressure on it, and hopefully you can get that stud out. But sometimes you have to go down for the heavy stuff. And what I mean is like the nut splitters, to where you have to actually, break that nut, split it to actually go beyond that. Now, if you accidentally, this can happen. I mean, sometimes you need to get a bolt out or a stud out, and it's been rounded over to the point where you can't even get it normally out. You need to have some bolt extractors. There is a side that actually pulls it helps you pulling the stud out. This is specific. When you get into your engines classes, you'll really get deep into this. If we have time, I'll show you how it's done. But it is for pulling and extracting bolts. And there's different sizes like you see here, and there's different types, and depending on what you're more familiar with and what you can work, what you like to use. Now, the wicks, what they call the wick, the wax trick. Many times, rusted bolts can be removed using heat to expand the metal and break the rust. And there's different types of, sometimes you can use wax, sometimes you have to use what I call penetrating oil. It's a special oil to remove the rust and kind of break the rust free. It doesn't really remove it. It kind of softens it up so you can get things out that way. Just depends on the idea. This is the wax trick right here, where they're trying to remove a plug, at the end of an engine itself. Now, like I said before, hacksaws are, again, you're going to use the same way you do a file. You're going to go downward, and it's going to be a pressure, and then kind of a lift, downward and pressure, and then lift when you're coming back up. That way you don't overheat the saw. I see so many people doing this, and because they're in a hurry, that will overheat that blade and cause it to be damaged. Now, the blades can be replaced, but I like to get a long life out of my blades too. You can actually look at the teeth and see how they're actually worn off or they're starting to turn blue. So basic hand tool sets, it's a great thing to have. You can buy them just about anywhere. Again, I would say get down to a quality tool. There's a lot of manufacturers out there. I've used the Snap-ons, the Matcos, and Mac, the Cornwell. I've also used the Sears. They're kind of tools too. I'm not a big fan of Harbor Freight, but they do have some good tools for certain work. And if you're starting off on a budget, I would say start off with what you can afford. And as you progress in your career, you want to start building a better toolbox, as I call it. All right, so here's a tool set. It actually has different sizes in it. It looks like it has a 1/4 inch and a 3/8, which is going to be your most common, which is great. And also a nut driver down right here. And then it has your different sizes of sockets. Now, depending on what you're working on, I'm old school, so I had the extra customary standard, which I'll do a video on that in just a little bit. But you also have metric. Metric is probably the most common today right now. The old cars used to be in the standard, American standard, and we'll talk about that a little bit later when I do the other video. Toolboxes, again, this is a Snap-on. I have a Snap-on, but you don't have to buy a toolbox. They take and hold your tools, keep them secure. And again, it comes down to what can you afford. And please don't let the tool companies, I know that they kill me for saying this, but don't let them run you into a contract that you got to have our stuff or it won't, be a work as well. That's not true. I always, go in and look at it, look at the quality, see what I need. I have my toolbox with Snap-on, Mac, Matco, different manufacturers in it. I actually do have some Harbor Freight that's more of electrical stuff, but I know the quality it is, and I know it won't perform like some of the other equipment will. So you want to make sure that you're aware of that. Now, you can buy, I started off with a Craftsman toolbox. Then I went into used toolbox my dad had. It was just the bottom section. So you don't need to jump into really big money to start off with. I always go by what my budget is. And then there's some specialty tools. There's some tools that you'll need for specific jobs. And some of these tools, the actual shop will actually have. But some of the ones I would have in mind are some seal pullers and drivers. Also, test lights. We'll talk more about that as we get into the electrical part of it. But I have some ideas on that. So soldering guns, I'm more of a soldering iron guy. Soldering guns can overheat a piece of wire. Wire strippers, wire crimpers, and also your multimeters. Now, this is one of the tools you will need to have in your toolbox. This is a wheel puller, seal puller, I should say, and it's going to take that seal out. The other thing that you need to have is a seal driver. This, again, some shops actually provide that for you, but not all. I always had my own. Then there's the seal itself. So you want to make sure you use the correct driver. If you don't, you can damage that seal, and then the seal will actually leak. And the idea is to keep the fluid or the grease from getting into other parts of the car. Well, let's just say this is a brake seal, and you want to make sure that shaft and that seal doesn't leak the fluid out. Test lights, again, test lights are great, but they have a specific purpose, and you don't use them for everything. Unfortunately, test lights do not, unless you get specific test lights that actually have a digital part. They don't tell you how much voltage. This says a 12 volt test light. That test light will start lighting at 3 volts. So that's why I'm not a big fan. It just tells you that you have potential of voltage there. Now, I prefer this is a couple, soldering guns. One is a butane, which is portable. This one is wired up, but I'm not a big fan of these because they can overheat a piece of work. We'll get more into it as we go along on that. So use a binder clip. This is great for when your fender covers keep falling off. You always want to use fender covers when you're working on a car. You don't want to damage your customer's car or your car. So this will help keep the fender cover from falling off. You can just use a little binder clip to do it. So a few questions. What tool would you be useful when repairing a broken wire? Of course, a soldering iron or a soldering gun would help. You can actually put a piece of solder in there and bring that connection back together. And it's a specific way of doing it. We'll talk more about that. And plus, in your electrical class, you'll be going that too. So just a few safety tips. Pull a wrench towards you. If you're tightening something up or you're loosening something up, you want to make sure it comes to you instead of away. If you're going away, you can actually hit your knuckles and cut them. If you slip coming this way, you could actually slip off, but you're just hitting yourself. And it's not that, it won't be as harmful to your skin and all like that. Keep your hand tools clean at all times. You will be doing a online, kind of training for this specific need this week. And also use 6-point sockets whenever possible. When you're breaking fasteners loose, unless it's a 12-point. Then you'll use that particular one. Use box in as much as possible, especially when you're torquing things down. Replace any tool that is damaged or worn. You don't want to grab something and actually hurt yourself by doing it. That's what happens. So clean the tool after use and keep tools separate. Line the drawers with, in your toolbox. That keeps the debris down. It keeps them looking nice too. You don't want to get your metal pieces all with a bunch of grease inside. It takes a lot more cleanup. I can change the liners out if they get too bad inside. But again, you're cleaning them before you're putting them in, so you shouldn't even have that. Remove tension from the torque wrench after use, especially when you're going to the torque wrenches that actually are a click type. Because if you leave them with a torque on it, there's a spring inside that stretches, and after a while it goes out of calibration sooner. Secure the toolbox. It's a big investment for you, and you spend a lot of money. And I've unfortunately had incidents where somebody has broken into my toolbox after hours, and it cost me a lot of money. But unfortunately, things happen. Some shops, and I'm not saying all, will actually put your tools under their actually insurance. So, but make sure you list all your tools, and make sure if you have a shop that does that you actually supply a list to your employer. If you don't, they don't know what you bought, and it's just your hearsay against it. So hopefully this was helpful. I'll be putting more videos together. We're going to get into power tools next. And we'll get into a little bit about measuring systems too, and some of the tools that you use in that end of it also. All right, so that's it for now. I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and take care now. We'll talk later. Bye for now.